Imagine an INFJ, once trapped in the manipulative web of a narcissist, now living a life of authentic joy and unshakable boundaries. Sound impossible? It's not. Discover the profound steps INFJs must take to heal deeply and ensure narcissists never hold power over them again. If you're an INFJ watching this, there's a good chance you've experienced a relationship that felt almost spiritual at first, only to slowly turn into confusion, self-doubt, emotional chaos, and a version of yourself you barely recognized. You weren't too sensitive. You weren't overreacting. You were being emotionally manipulated. And today, we're going to walk through exactly why INFJs are so vulnerable to narcissists, what it takes to break that bond completely, and how to rebuild a life that not only feels peaceful, but protected. Let's start with a hard truth. INFJs are magnets for narcissists. Not because something is wrong with them, but because of what's right with them. INFJs carry deep empathy, an almost psychic emotional radar, and a powerful desire to help and heal. That creates what psychologists call the rescuer archetype. As an INFJ, you don't just want people to feel better, you want to save them. You see their trauma, their wounds, their pain behind the mask. Narcissists sense this instantly. To them, your empathy is not a gift. It's a resource. A supply. Something to exploit. So how does this dynamic start? In the beginning, it often feels like destiny. Narcissists mirror INFJs. They study your values, your dreams, your wounds, and then reflect them back to you. If you say you value honesty, they'll overshare personal vulnerabilities. If you say you've always felt misunderstood, they'll say, "I've never met anyone like you. You really get me. It feels like someone finally sees you." But in reality, they're constructing a persona tailored to your deepest emotional hunger. This is not love. It's strategic seduction. INFJs also have a chameleon-like empathy. You adapt to the emotional climate of the relationship. If the narcissist is angry, you soften. If they're sad, you comfort. If they're distant, you chase connection and wonder what you did wrong. Slowly, the relationship shape shifts. You stop being yourself and become whatever keeps the peace. That's how your empathy gets weaponized against you. The narcissist doesn't have to maintain the relationship. You do it for both of you. You interpret, justify, explain, and patch things up. And each time you rescue, they learn there are no real consequences for their behavior. And then there are the red flags INFJs often miss, or explain away. That uneasy feeling in your gut when they spoke cruelly about an ex but called them crazy. The way they never really apologized, only shifted the blame. The subtle competitiveness when something good happened in your life. The jokes that stung a little too deeply. Because INFJs are idealistic, you tend to focus on potential instead of patterns. You see who they could be if they healed, not who they are right now. That's how the cycle tightens. You fall in love with a future version of them that will never exist. Eventually, the mask starts to slip. You notice the inconsistencies. The charm turns cold. The compliments become criticisms. You start hearing phrases like, "You're too sensitive," "You're imagining things," or "No one else has a problem with this." This is where gaslighting takes root. As an INFJ, you're already prone to self-analysis. So instead of thinking, "They're mistreating me," you think, "Maybe I really am the problem." Your empathy turns inward in the worst way possible. You empathize with their behavior while abandoning your own reality. So how do you begin to move on completely? The first step is brutal but necessary. You have to name it. Not a complicated relationship. Not someone who hurt me but had a good heart. You need to recognize the dynamic for what it is: emotional abuse, manipulation, narcissistic patterns. Giving it a name pulls it out of the fog and into the light. INFJs struggle with this because it feels harsh, judgmental, and unloving. But this isn't about condemning them as a human being. It's about accurately labeling a pattern so your brain can finally stop romanticizing it. Next comes the part most INFJs secretly resist: going no contact, or as close to it as your situation allows. No contact isn't about punishing them. It's about detoxing your nervous system. Every text you check, every social media stalk, every reread of old messages is like taking another hit of the trauma bond. You're not just missing them, you're addicted to the highs and lows they created. INFJs, with their deep emotional memory, tend to hold on to beautiful moments as proof that there was something real. You have to accept this. The good moments were part of the manipulation too. If they were always cruel, you would have left on day one. The sweetness was bait. But going no contact isn't just blocking and deleting. It also means stopping the internal conversations. The imaginary arguments. The fantasy where they finally understand your heart and apologize. That mental storyline is another hook. It keeps them living rent-free in your mind. When you catch yourself replaying, pause and say, "This is a trauma loop, not truth." Then gently redirect your focus, journal, breathe, move your body, call a safe friend. Moving on isn't just emotional. It's neurological. You're rewiring your brain away from chaos and toward safety. One of the most painful parts for INFJs is grieving the version of themselves they became in that relationship. The INFJ who stayed quiet to avoid conflict. The INFJ who walked on eggshells. The INFJ who accepted less, who tolerated behavior that violated their core values. You might feel ashamed. How did I let this happen? But here's the reframe: you were not weak. You were loyal. You were loving. You were committed. Those are strengths. They were simply given to someone who weaponized them. Moving on completely means reclaiming these traits and redirecting them toward people and environments that actually deserve them. Now let's talk about boundaries, a word INFJs often understand logically but struggle to embody emotionally. A boundary is not, "I hope you treat me better." A boundary is, "If you speak to me that way, I will leave the conversation." It's action, not a request. With narcissists, boundaries are often what finally reveal their true nature. They will test them, push them, mock them. That doesn't mean your boundaries are wrong. It means they're working. For INFJs, enforcing boundaries feels almost physically painful at first because it triggers guilt and fear of being mean. But remember, every time you protect your energy, you're teaching your nervous system that you matter too. To move on completely, INFJs also have to dismantle a heavy lie: "If I had loved them better, they would have changed." No, narcissistic patterns are not healed by more love, more patience, or more understanding. If love alone could change them, you would have seen transformation long ago, because you gave them more love than most people ever will. Their behavior isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their wounds, defenses, and lack of accountability. Your healing begins when you stop taking responsibility for their inner work and start taking radical responsibility for your own. This is where inner healing becomes spiritual for many INFJs. You might start asking deeper questions. Why did I feel so at home in that chaos? Why did intensity feel like connection? Why did I ignore my intuition when it whispered, "Something is off"? Often, the answer traces back to earlier experiences, childhood dynamics, family roles, religious or cultural messages that taught you to prioritize others above yourself. Moving on isn't just about getting over one person. It's about breaking generational patterns of self-abandonment. Therapy, trauma-informed coaching, or even deep journaling can help INFJs untangle these roots with compassion instead of judgment. As you heal, something beautiful begins to happen. Your intuition gets louder again. INFJs are naturally intuitive, but narcissistic relationships train you to distrust yourself. You second-guess your perceptions, your feelings, your needs. In recovery, you can start doing the opposite, taking your body's signals seriously. Tight chest around someone? That's information. Feeling drained after a conversation? That's information. You don't need a logical reason to trust your discomfort. You are allowed to walk away simply because your nervous system doesn't feel safe. That alone is a radical act of self-love for an INFJ. Moving on completely also means redefining what love looks and feels like. After a narcissistic relationship, healthy love can feel boring at first. There's no constant drama, no emotional roller coaster, no need to constantly prove your worth. Your system might misinterpret peace as lack of chemistry. That's normal. You've been conditioned to associate love with adrenaline. This is where conscious re-education comes in. You begin telling yourself, love is calm, not chaotic. Love is consistent, not confusing. Love expands you, it doesn't shrink you. And little by little, your heart recalibrates. And here's a crucial step many skip: building a life that doesn't revolve around being someone's healer. INFJs feel purposeful when they're helping others, but that can become an identity trap. To fully move on, you need joy that isn't tied to fixing anyone. Start small. Explore hobbies you abandoned. Reconnect with creativity, writing, music, art, nature. Strengthen friendships that feel mutual and nourishing. Learn something new just because it fascinates you. The more you experience a life that feels full on its own, the less tempting it becomes to return to relationships that drain you just to feel needed. Eventually, there comes a quiet turning point. You realize you're not checking their profile anymore. You're not rehearsing speeches in your head. You're not waiting for closure. You've given that closure to yourself. The story shifts from, "They did this to me," to, "This experience woke me up to what I truly deserve." You can look back without collapsing. You can acknowledge the pain without losing yourself in it. That's when you know, you haven't just moved on, you've ascended to a different level of self-respect. So, if you're an INFJ who has loved a narcissist, here's what I want you to remember. You were never weak for staying. You were never foolish for believing in their potential. You were operating from your highest values: loyalty, compassion, hope. Those qualities are sacred. Your task now is not to harden your heart, but to guard it with wisdom. To let your empathy flow, but only where there is honesty, reciprocity, and respect. Narcissists thrive in the shadows of your self-doubt. They wither in the light of your self-knowledge. The more you understand who you are, what you need, and what you will never tolerate again, the less space there is in your world for people who only come to take. Healing doesn't erase what happened. But it does rewrite the ending, from a story of being broken by someone, to a story of being reborn stronger, clearer, and more deeply yourself than ever before. If this spoke to your INFJ heart, you're not alone. Let me know in the comments which part hit you the hardest, and what boundary you're committing to from this day forward. And if you're ready for more deep dives into INFJ psychology, healing, and healthy love, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and share this with another INFJ who needs to hear it. Your story isn't over because of what they did. In many ways, it's just beginning.